Thank you, everyone, for being here. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Dwayne Lester. I got to tell you, the catalyst for this training was years ago, and I remember exactly what happened. I was at my mom and dad's house, and I said to myself, I want to go talk to my little brother about politics, and this is going to be a nice, polite conversation, and we're going to talk about our differences amicably, and we're going to just really enjoy a conversation about politics. And the next thing I know, I'm yelling at my brother. I don't know what happened. I remember everything about the scene. I remember where he was sitting on my mom and dad's couch. I remember where I was sitting. I remember how he looked. I remember everyone who was around there. And I remember thinking to myself, why am I yelling at someone I love so much? Why am I yelling at someone who I care for so much? And why am I yelling at someone who I'm supposed to protect? You know, as the big brother, you're supposed to protect the little brother. And here I am yelling at the person I'm supposed to be protecting. And that instance has haunted me since that's happened. And I couldn't figure out why that happened. And I couldn't figure out why we can't talk to one another anymore. And so as I've grown in the liberty movement, as I've trained, as I've worked on different things, one thing that has been constant for me is learning about sales, because I was taught if you can sell, you'll never be out of a job. So if this whole speaking gig falls apart, you know, I'll be selling Buicks down the road. Come and see me. I've got a deal for you. But one thing that I learned while I was reading was the best people in sales never come with the hard sell. They never, when you walk on the lot, it isn't the first, have I got a deal for you? It isn't when you walk into their store, it isn't, hey, I know exactly what you need. The best people in sales do one thing first. And so what I'd like you to do right now, you've got your worksheets. What I'd like you to do is just take 2 minutes. Take 2 minutes and write down the principles of a free society that are most important to you. What principles in a free society are most important to you? Let's take 2 minutes and you write those down. What can I clarify for anyone? Excellent. 2 minutes, starting now. Go. All right, thank you for taking the time to do that. I appreciate that. There's probably more principles you could write down, but we're going to go ahead and move forward. If you don't mind, sir, right here, what is your name?
Kyle.
Kyle, tell me a few of the principles that you wrote down.
Including equality for everyone.
Why is that important to you?
Because you know, the government, you know, puts in laws that make special classes, and it's not fair.
Special classes.
Certain groups get tax breaks, and like veterans, and you know, it's just not older people.
All right.
Yeah, it's not fair for everyone across the board.
All right, what else did you have? That's the only one you got. I appreciate you sharing with that. Anybody else? Please, go ahead.
Property rights.
Tell me more.
Property rights?
No, tell me more.
Okay. Property rights are necessary for a properly functioning economic system. They're also, as we've seen historically and through theories from like Ludwig von Mises, it's the best way to organize society.
It sounds like Austrian economics is something that's very important to you.
Yeah, that is also very important to me, yes, sir.
Very important. Tell me more.
I think that the logically deductive method is more accurate to describe like a human theory than like the empiricist method. So the empirical method's great for when you're delving into the hard sciences. You know, we can, like in physics, we can measure how rocks, if you drop a rock, how it will fall. But humans aren't rocks. We have things that rocks don't, like subjective value. Rocks can't value. Yeah.
Did you have anything else that you wrote down?
Sound money, so it kind of ties in.
Excellent. Please.
Freedom from coercion was my big one.
Coercion.
Yes, freedom from coercion is very important to me in a free society because So freedom from coercion to be able to buy what goods they want to buy, vote how they want, live how they want, so long as it doesn't harm anyone else.
It seems like you've given this a lot of thought.
Yes.
Can you tell me more about it?
Would you like another point, or do you want me to go on?
Well, tell me, it sounds like individual liberty is really what you're talking
Yes,
about.
individual liberty is something that's very important to me. So the ability to live how you want, worship how you want, vote how you want, talk how you want, without the fear of going to jail or being harmed or losing your property rights or having an arbitrary social credit score assigned to you that means, uh-oh, now you can't shop at this grocery store and your friends are going to avoid you because you said the wrong thing on Twitter.
So what we've done here is something that I didn't do with my little brother. And if you'll go ahead and turn the page, you'll see six steps to a better conversation. What we often fail to do, and what the best people in sales will do, is they will seek first to understand and then to be understood. And very often we don't listen to understand, we listen to respond. And that comes straight from the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Great book. A lot of people see it as a self-help book, but it is a fantastic book. When I was talking with my brother about politics, I was listening just deeply enough to tell him why he was an idiot and wrong. And very often we do that when we talk to other people about politics. We only want to refute what they have to say rather than find what they actually value. And so what I did in this conversation, just to illustrate the power of this, I did 4 very specific things. One thing I did was called mirroring. So that first point, repeating key words used by the person with whom you're talking, you can write mirroring in that box. And mirroring is simply saying 3 to 5 words that the person has said to you. 3 to 5 words? Yes, that's all you need. Just repeat 3 to 5 words, and then the person will almost feel compelled to keep talking. It's like you're asking them a question, but you're just saying a few things that they've said. That shows that you're listening. Another thing that I did was called labeling, and that's the second thing that you see written down there. Recognizing the meaning of and the feelings and comments made by the other side. That's labeling. Labeling looks like, it sounds like you've given this a lot of thought. And what did you do?
I elaborated more.
You kept talking. You kept talking. It seems like this is important. It sounds like this. And what you're doing there is you're telling this person, not only am I listening to you, but I understand how you feel about this. It sounds like this is something you're quite passionate about. It sounds like you've given this a lot of thought. And guess what? If they have, they're going to say, yeah, I have. And you know what else? This. And they're going to keep talking, and they're going to keep talking, and you're going to keep listening. Because what you're trying to do is understand what's important to this person. You're trying to understand what principles they find valuable. And you're just gathering information. Because what you want to do is you want to sell a specific principle. Number 3, you heard me say this several times, and it's very simple. Just tell me more. Wow, that's fascinating. I hadn't thought of it that way. Can you tell me more about that? And they will. Would you like, I said, tell me more. Well, would you like another point? Would you like a dissertation? What would you like? Well, I'm really interested. Tell me more. Tell me why this is important to you, which is point 4. Tell me why this is important to you. And they will keep talking. They'll tell you why this is important to them. You can have conversations just with those last 2 points. Tell me why that's important to you. I hadn't thought of it that way. Can you tell me more? Well, wow, why is that important to you? And what you're doing is you're looking for a principle that you both share. There might be a time when you're working with someone you disagree with 80% of the time. But that 20%, that's where you can find common ground. And that's where you can start selling freedom. I remember I was teaching a class, and I had a guy, he said to me, I don't like working with people I don't agree with all the time. And I said, yeah, I remember being single. I don't agree with myself from 10 years ago. And when you're listening, you might find a point that you hadn't thought of. And now suddenly you have a new perspective. And now suddenly you've grown and you've learned something. I was at an event with Dan Fishman not long ago, and he talked about this very thing. And this is a point that I've made years ago. You have a right to health care. And a lot of people, that blows their mind. But when you say, I have a right to health care, meaning if I get sick, I should be able to go to the doctor of my choice without someone standing in my way. I should be able to discuss my illnesses with that doctor. I should be able to choose the treatment without somebody standing in my way. It's the difference between positive rights and negative rights. A positive right means somebody has to do something for you to exercise it, and a negative right means it just exists. And so when you talk with somebody, that might blow their mind. They might learn something, you might learn something, and it's a matter of gathering that information. And then once you have that information, you can move on. But while you're listening, you need to listen for specific cues. You need to listen for things, and you can see it on the next page where you see Kling's 3 languages of politics. When I was talking to my brother, I knew it might be a little dicey because my brother tends to see things through the lens of oppressor and oppressed. And according to Kling's book, 3 Languages of Politics, which I saw at the Cato table, which is right next to the GLA table. When you come to see us, you can ask him for the book. Kling says liberals tend to see things through the lens of oppressor and oppressed. Me, I tend to see things through the lens of coercion versus liberty. If you want to draw a line from liberal to oppressor and oppressed, and from libertarian to coercion versus liberty, those are the lenses. And according to Kling, conservatives tend to see things through a lens of civilization versus barbarism. So when you said coercion, that's a cue. I'm talking probably to a libertarian, because libertarians tend to bring up coercion in every conversation, regardless of what we're talking about. What'd you like for dinner? I don't want coercion, that's for sure. It happens. We're like that. We're strange. And if you look at the bottom, you see the moral foundations theory. This is from a book called The Righteous Mind. I highly recommend reading it. It's by a guy named Jonathan Haidt. And Haidt recognized that we all have different taste buds. We all have different ways of looking at issues. But everyone, libertarians, liberals, conservatives, they all put an emphasis on caring and fairness. It's just how we define the different issues. So when you're listening to people, look for those cues, and it can give you an idea of who you're actually talking to. So once you've gathered your information, let's go ahead and turn to this last page. Once you've gathered your information, then you can start getting into your sales pitch. I've identified a principle that you and I both agree with. We both care about individual rights. That's why I clarified. When you start talking about coercion, then what I said was, it sounds like what you're really talking about is individual rights. That's actually step 2 on here. I stated the principle that I was about to talk about. I stated the principle that I feel we both share, and I'm going to move forward on that. It sounds like what you really care about is individual rights. That's step 2, state the principle. At step 3, I'm going to establish credibility. So what this means doesn't mean, I value individual rights too. And when I was getting my doctorate in political philosophy and economics, let me tell you it doesn't mean that. It means, let me show you how I got skin in this game too. So I might say, it sounds like what you're talking about is individual rights. And as a father of 9 children, which we can process later at the booth if you want to talk about that. As a father of 9 children, 4 of which are daughters, I know that there's a need to really emphasize individual rights. I know that there's a need to make sure that my children are freer than we are today. And that's my whole focus, is to make sure that the future for my children is freer than the one we have right now. And individual rights is foundational on that, along with property rights. So now I've established credibility. So I've stated the principle we're going to talk about. I've established credibility. Step 4 is I'm going to define the principle. So in the blank, step 4, I define the principle. Now what I mean by individual rights is that as long as I am not hurting someone or violating their rights, that I should have the ability to exercise freedom and liberty in a way that benefits me and benefits others. As long as I'm not hurting someone or taking their stuff, I should have the freedom to move. I should have the freedom to talk. I should have the freedom to live where I want to live and move where I want to move, buy what I want to buy, as long as it's not violating the rights of others. So I've established that right. And then step 5, I will create common ground. And I think having that individual liberty is important to you also, isn't it? Yeah. Exactly. And that's when I go to 6. I've established common ground, and 6 is I will connect the principle to my policy. I will connect the principle to my policy. Now, you wrote principle down a lot, and that's deliberate. Principles are key to this entire thing. We will share principles one way or the other. You can find that principle, but you have to understand what your principles are and why you hold them valuable. You have to understand what's important to you so you can then find what's important to others, and you can find that key that will help you work with someone you disagree with 90% of the time. And then once you start working with them, guess what happens? You start forming a relationship built on trust. Yeah, you might not agree, but how often do we attribute malice to someone we disagree with when it shouldn't be? We attribute, well, they're bad people, they're evil, they're wrong, they're bad. No, you just disagree with them. But when you build trust, you build that relationship, that trust leads to you being able to educate them. It's difficult to educate someone who doesn't trust you. It simply is. I get my trust. I mean, you came here because you trust me, not because you know me, but because you trust LibertyCon. You trust Students for Liberty, and they wouldn't put someone up here on stage. So I get trust by osmosis, or something from Students for Liberty. There's a trust there. That trust allows me to educate. When I can educate, well, that leads to motivate. Trust to relationship, to education, to motivation. That motivation will lead to mobilization. There's a process there. But it all starts with listening first to understand, not to be understood. Yeah, that is absolutely key. I have a few minutes left, and I usually, believe it or not, this is usually a 90-minute course. We boiled it down to about 20 to 25 minutes for you all today. What I'd like to do now is see what questions you have, if any. I mean, I'm pretty good at this, so. What I would suggest is this. There's going to be a time when you move into the second, third, fourth, fifth steps, and somebody starts arguing with you. It's going to happen. Expect it. It happens to me still to this day. Like I said, I am married. I have children. I have friends that I don't agree with all the time. When someone starts arguing with you, you own that. You say to yourself, okay, this is on me. I did not listen well enough to understand. There's information out there I don't have to move forward. We're having this failure because I didn't listen and I didn't get all the information I needed. You go right back to step one. So if you're talking to someone and you say, it sounds like what you're talking about is individual rights, and they look at you and say, no, I'm not, you moron. You look at them and you smile and you say, tell me more. Right? And smile. That smile will disarm them, because if someone's calling you a moron, they are expecting what? They're expecting a counterpunch. And if you say, wow, I'm a moron, tell me more about that. They won't expect it. It'll be disarming. You can use that. You can absolutely use that. So these principles are paramount. Know your principles. Listen first to understand, then to be understood. And expect to fail. I've got a few minutes. Like I said, I was actually training this online with a group, and I was talking about Arthur Kling's book, and by the time I got to the end of the book discussion, he comes on and said, I don't have a question. I just want to tell you, I don't like the use of this book at all. I find this book to be degrading. I think you're categorizing people wrong. I think it's dehumanizing, and I don't like the whole time he's talking. I'm looking at the rest of my agenda. I'm saying, okay, after he's done, then we need to go here, here. How much time do I have left? Okay, then I need to get here, here, and then done. And all I heard was he stopped ranting. And I turned and said, thank you for making a comment. If you could all go ahead and turn the page, and what should I have done? When he stopped ranting, well, first of all, I should have been listening. And then when he stopped, I should have said, tell me more about that. It sounds like this is something that's really important to you. I could have labeled it, I could have mirrored it, I could have done a lot of things, but I failed. You'll fail too. Practice, 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 and it'll get easier. Trust me, I don't know how many times a day I look at someone and say, tell me more about that. So I'm going to wrap this up. What I'd like you to do, there's more to this training. I've put some QR codes up over there. If you want to scan and get my ebook, it's called Overcoming the Backfire Effect, and I go into some other things that I use. when I really get into conversations with people who are adamant about my position being wrong, there's some different techniques I use. Questions are the answer. So my time is up. I do appreciate you all being here. Thank you so much. Scan the QR code and come see me at the booth if you don't mind. Thank you.